secret societies, mysterious disappearances, and political intrigue. Today, we're going to learn about the kidnapping that changed presidential history. This is Masons, Morgan, and Murder. Part 1. The Freemasons. No one can say for certain when the Freemason order originated. The earliest document that mentions Masonry is the Regius Poem, which was printed in 1390. What is more agreed on is that in 1717, the Grand Lodge in England was formed, the first of its kind in the world that we know of. In 1725, Ireland built a lodge of their own, and Scotland followed in 1736. Many other lodges have since been formed, but all trace their roots back to the lodges in the British Isles. The second theory of how the Freemasons and lodges got their start comes from the late 16th century. The Freemason group was designed to help create a better man and in turn create a better world. They saw this to be necessary due to the great religious and political intolerance that led to the oppression of many people during the time period. The main source of teachings came from the Bible, because it was widely known and understood, even to those that could not read. The Bible was used in many ways by the Masons. It was the main source for many of their allegory. It also played a role in many of the Masons' rituals. Prior to the story we are about to explore today, Freemasonry had achieved a high degree of public prominence as far as America goes. George Washington and Benjamin Franklin were only two of numerous early American leaders who were Freemasons. Altogether, it is believed that 9 of the 56 men that signed the Declaration of Independence and about 13 of the 39 that signed the US Constitution were Masons. But as the order grew in power and influence, people became more and more suspicious of it. I wonder why. Part 2. The Disappearance. In 1826, a disgruntled New York Freemason named William Morgan announced that he was going to write a book disclosing the most sacred secrets of Freemasons. Local Masons, incensed by Morgan's actions, published advertisements denouncing him and got a friendly sheriff to arrest him for a $2 debt. In 1826, $2 went a long way. On the night of September 12th, a group of men descended on the jail and spirited Morgan out. "Murder! Murder!" shouted the struggling Morgan as he was thrown into a waiting carriage. The carriage went clattering into the night, and Morgan was never seen again. The kidnapping and alleged murder of Morgan triggered a ferocious anti-Mason movement. Clergymen decried the Masons' secret oaths, claiming from the pulpit that Masons were part of an international conspiracy. Hundreds of lodges across the country closed, and the fraternal order's respected position in American society was nearly destroyed. Part 3. Life Story. William Morgan was a brick mason in the city of Batavia, upstate New York. The people in Batavia did not have the most positive view of Morgan. He was often looked at as an uneducated, shrew, and careless man who was repeatedly arrested for his recklessness, only to be later bailed out by Masonic charity. It is hard to say if Morgan was actually a Mason or not. Some believe he had become a Mason at the lodge in Rochester, and others speculate he only attended meetings as an imposter, pretending to be someone he wasn't, in order to gain passage into their secret world. I'm not gonna lie, I'd probably end up doing something like that. Once it became known that Morgan might not actually be a member, the Freemasons became wary of him and made sure he was no longer able to impose. At the same time, Morgan announced that he was going to publish that book that exposes all the Freemasons and tells the world all about their rituals, secrets, and agendas. Morgan did this very publicly and did not shy away from talking about the book he was writing to friends and even when chatting to strangers at the local bar. To be a fly on that table, huh? Part 4. The Order Responds. To this day, the Masonic organization denies any involvement with William Morgan's sudden disappearance. Some chapters even go as far as to say he was never murdered at all, or didn't exist. Who the is Morgan? What the is happening? No Mason was ever convicted of murdering Morgan, and the court did not feel it was okay to charge any of the 54 men indicted because there wasn't even a body to indicate foul play. Instead, only 11 were convicted of minor kidnapping charges. Like, minor kidnapping. It's like light treason. Anyway, only 11 were convicted of minor kidnapping charges, with sentences ranging from 1 to 28 months. Many Masons claimed that Morgan knew nothing of the organization, and that his accusations about them were pure lies. There was a group, however, which did believe that Morgan was telling the truth, and this very same group went on to establish a third major political party for the first time in American history. Wow. Part 5. The Anti-Mason Movement. Out of the emotional protests emerged America's first real third-party movement, which had great success in the Northeast. Particularly, Morgan's disappearance is what sparked the Anti-Mason Movement, which was officially formed into a political party in 1828, in direct opposition to the Freemasons. The Anti-Mason Party was mostly made up of blue-collar, hard-working Americans that felt the Freemasons were elitist. They also believed that the Freemasons opposed free speech and religious freedoms. The Anti-Masons grew very fast and were committed to their cause, presenting a platform condemning Masonry for its secrecy and exclusivity. Soon they had newspapers, books, and various other forms of communication to help their fight against the secret powers that be. In many states, the Anti-Mason Party was small, or did not have any members at all, but in states like New York and Massachusetts, it was the primary rival to the Democratic Party. The Anti-Masons decided to mount a presidential campaign. They gathered in Baltimore to pick a political party to hold a national nominating convention. Other parties quickly picked up on the idea, and a new tradition in presidential politics was born. The irony of it all was that the Anti-Masons nominated William Wirt, himself a former Mason, as their candidate for president, who managed to win one state, Vermont. The victors in the election were two past Masonic Grand Masters, Andrew Jackson and Henry Clay. The Anti-Mason Party, quick question, do you know anything about Andrew Jackson? He's pretty spicy. The Anti-Mason Party had a short shelf life, however. By the late 1830s, it was absorbed into the Whig Party. With little support coming from any states other than those in New England, it was hard to oppose both the Freemasons and the Democratic Party, and all the power. The other issue at hand was that, much like today, very little is known of what the Freemasons stood for and planned to do. The Anti-Masonic Almanac changes its perspective on Masonry almost every year. It becomes extremely hard to stand against something when you truly don't know what that something stands for. To this day, there is a small group of people that believe Freemasons are corrupt and have taken over the United States government. They have very little ground to stand on because it has been decades since anyone in Washington, D.C. has openly admitted to being part of the nowadays not-so-secret society. Nevertheless, the topic does remain intriguing, sparking the imagination of people who, how should I say it, like to think outside of the box. Part 6. Theories. Of course, theories vary on what happened to Morgan. Some believe that he was driven off to Fort Niagara, allegedly murdered and then dumped into Lake Ontario. Others that he was driven out of the country, and still others that the whole thing was a publicity stunt for his book, which was eventually published right after his disappearance and can actually be found on Amazon today. No affiliate links for this one, sorry. The supposed secrets it revealed were mostly arcane Masonic rituals. On another separate but very interesting note, Morgan's wife later became one of the wives of Mormon prophet Joseph Smith. Anyway, it's time to talk about today's sponsor, which is still nobody, so like and subscribe, and maybe even comment below and answer some questions like, what are your thoughts on the subject? What do you think really happened to Morgan? How was your day? Do you still like me? Why are you in my house? Stuff like that, you know? Comment below, and see you next week.